This is another ethical scenario. It is scenario 68. The interpreter gives her opinion in class. You're interpreting a college classroom when the professor announces that a reporter from the Detroit News will be coming to class to speak about their ongoing labor dispute. To your amazement, your team interpreter raises her hand and starts complaining to the professor. She says, "I can't believe you would let some scab reporter come into this classroom." You interpret as the professor defends his position, but that's besides the point. You think she should have stayed enrolled and kept her opinion to herself. So first I'm going to voice how I would answer, and then I'm going to sign. So the problem is that your team interpreter has stepped out of their role and has now spoken their opinion in the class. Your viewpoint as the interpreter interpreting is that your friend should have stayed enrolled, and that interpreters have a role of being an interpreter and having an opinion. So your team interpreter's viewpoint is that they have rights as a person, as a human being, to say what they think, and so they did that. The deaf consumer's viewpoint might be embarrassment because one of their interpreters are speaking out. Maybe also frustration. The teacher's perspective viewpoint might be that, they're kind of frustrated in the sense that someone is disagreeing with them, and also kind of shocked that it's the interpreter, and maybe kind of have a a negative view on interpreters themselves. The ethics that guide this scenario is, first of all, interpreters are not supposed to do dual roles. We're not supposed to be interpreter and advisor or anything like that. And being an interpreter means that that communication is that the deaf person has equal access to communication. And so that means we as interpreters are there to interpret what's being said, not to be there to say our opinions and such. Another thing that the CPC guides with this situation is, if you see an interpreter stepping out of role or doing something that's against the CPC or the laws, that you are to, appropriately talk to them about that and bring that to their attention. So this is definitely a situation where you want to talk to your team about what happened. You're also, as an interpreter, supposed to have respect for consumers and for your colleagues. This doesn't just mean the deaf person, but also for the teacher, as they are also a consumer that we are working with. And then as me, as the interpreter interpreting, when I confront this person about the situation, I need to be respectful. Other resources that I would use in this situation would be, be supportive as the team, meaning that you're not mean to your team or you look down on them. You just be supportive, meaning you help them improve. So that would also include confronting them when appropriate. Yeah. As for what I would do, I could, when the two of us switched, kind of say something, what, that probably wasn't appropriate, and kind of give them a heads up that I want to talk to them more about it afterwards, after the class is done. I could also wait till after the whole entire class to talk to my team about that. Or I could suggest to the deaf person that they talk to the interpreter about that. I would do after the class is done, have a chat with the interpreter about what happened and maybe what could have been done instead of what happened. The short-term effects on that, the short-term effects of that for me would be, it would be a little awkward in the sense that I'm confronting them about something they did wrong, However, long term, I know that then both of us would be on the same page, and also that I did the right thing in informing them that they did something unethical, even though it's a little awkward. Short-term effect for the team interpreter, they might be embarrassed or they might get defensive, depending on how I do it. But long-term, hopefully the two of us then would agree on what our roles as interpreters are, and be reminded of that, and also be able to work more effectively as we continue to team. The short-term effect for the deaf consumer. As the class goes on, then the deaf consumer might still be quite embarrassed, but then hopefully after our discussion and the next day, let's say when we meet, they will notice that we're working things out so that they would trust interpreters to figure things out when something goes wrong. So trust interpreters. As for the effect with the teacher, short term, they might be frustrated with interpreters and maybe have a frustration and kind of a negative view of interpreters, but hopefully seeing us improve, maybe the interpreter would apologize, then they would have the view of, okay, you know, interpreters are professionals and they do work things out and they do keep each other accountable. All right.